Zach Laws of Gold Derby here with Phyllis Housen. She's the film editor of Clemency. And Phyllis, this film is really powerful and a stark examination of capital punishment and the criminal justice system. So I just want to know, when you read the script, how did it affect you purely on an emotional level?
Well, the script was an amazing read, and you could feel it. You could feel it right away that it was this internal story of a woman's, basically an implosion of her world based on what she did for a living. I did not know that much about the prison industrial complex or clemency or the death penalty, really. And so it was very interesting to have this path into learning about it. Basically, it was a very interesting angle.
Did it then help shape some of your views?
Says the editor.
Right, interesting angle. Yeah, got you there.
Did it shape my views? Let me think about that for a minute. I guess I have to say, of course, yes, because it hadn't occurred to me that there were these. Of course, I knew that there were people on death row who may or may not have done the crime, who were going to be killed for that. But it was really the botched lethal injection that really made me think about the horror that this actually brings to not only the person who has done or not done the crime, but the families and the people involved in their lives and the people that have to do it. And it's a really horrible, horrible way to be punished.
Yeah, absolutely. So going off of that, what was your, I guess, editorial approach? Because I mean, obviously, like you get a script and you get some ideas off of that, and then there's the shooting of the movie, and that that changes all sorts of things. So when you were sitting down with Chinonye, the director of this movie, what were your guys' thoughts about how you wanted to approach this film editorially?
Well, Chinonye had a very clear vision of what she wanted, which is rare. And I think we're going to see a lot of really, really interesting things from her. But editing is a process, and you put together the film. When they're shooting the film, you put it together according to the script, and you build the bricks of the scenes, and you juxtapose them with other scenes. And then when you get an assembly of the film, you sort of see what story has been put together. And as you're watching and over months and whittling it down, the real story emerges. And the two biggest things for me about this film, and it wasn't really my approach in the beginning, it was really learned through the process. The actors were so incredible, and the film was so quiet in its way that I left a lot more lead time for the actors before they actually spoke their lines, because they acted what was happening internally. And then sometimes we didn't even need the dialogue because you could understand where they were coming from. The second thing, which is more of a macro look at it, is in the script, there was much more external life of protest. And there was much more television, and we could see the protesters more often. And we spent more time with the world outside the prison. And what we found as we went along, that the film became much more internalized for Bernadine. And instead of, we did see the protesters in the beginning and a little bit in the middle, but we really cut that down and we heard them from her perspective, which I really think helped internalize the story for her.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because the movie really does delve into the psychology of this woman in a very intimate way, and it feels like, I mean, you dive deeper and deeper and deeper into that as the story goes along. And I was just talking to your cinematographer about this, sort of the visual approach.
Beautiful job.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And one of the things he talked about was, starting out wide and going closer and closer and closer and closer. So I'm guessing that was part of your strategy as well.
Absolutely. Although, if you think about it, the first shot of the film is fairly close on
Right.
On Bernadine walking into the prison with the prison door slamming behind her, until she goes through the entire process and then comes out the prison door at the end and can actually breathe, even though the audience doesn't breathe for a few minutes after that. But yeah, we definitely found that, as I said, as we went along, that we needed to get further and further inside her head and really slow the picture down, really make it about the daily life and the ritual. And, she walked up and down those hallways forever. And instead of sort of showing her walking a little bit and then getting her where she was going, we actually stayed with her and walked so we could feel the length of the prison hallways. And I think that was very helpful, internalizing for her as well. Right.
You have this other story as well, with the inmate played by Aldous Hodge, who is, facing imminent execution, and that's where, most of the drama from the story comes from, in terms of like, I don't want to call it a thriller aspect, but you know what I mean, like what's
going to happen?
Right. Talk a little bit about balancing that aspect of the story with this intense character study.
Okay. We really, really focused on the ritual with their relationship, certainly, between Bernadine and Aldous, between Bernadine and the inmate. The only way she could really manage him was through the ritual. And what are you going to have for your last meal? And this is what happens to you on the day of your procedure. And in talking about Aldous on his own, we meet him as a pretty intimidating character. He's big and he doesn't speak at all. And, we really don't know that he did it or not. But I think throughout the film, he softens and we come to like him, whether or not we feel he did it. We really tried to humanize him in a way that Bernadine couldn't. And I think we focused on that a lot with him when he was with his lawyer. We could see who he used to be. Right. And then I think his most intense scene, of course, is with Daniel Brooks toward the end, when she comes to tell him about his son. And just from the beginning of that scene to the end, there's such a transformation in his personality. He comes in so hopeful and almost innocent. And by the end, he's sort of jaded again and realizes that his life is what it's become. So that's sort of how we approached him. But he did such an amazing job without speaking. I mean, the man barely said, 5 words in the film, and he conveyed so much internal life that we were, so lucky to work with him.
Yeah, it is interesting how, like, the dynamic between Bernadine and Anthony Woods, I believe is his name.
Anthony, of course. Yeah.
Yes. I always end up calling people by the actor's name as well, so
I go back and forth all the time.
I mean, their relationship is so interesting because, the dynamic between them, she's constantly trying to get through to him in a sense of, like, by talking and telling him what he's got to expect and trying to get some kind of response, and he never gives it to her. So it's an interesting kind of power play between the two of them,
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think he can give in to her. I think that he doesn't. She brings this sort of scenario of hopelessness every time she comes to speak with him. He doesn't get to go to his mother's funeral, but he can make a phone call after the funeral. She really is giving him, yes, dignity, but really the bare minimum, because she has to go by the rules. And so I don't think he can allow himself to soften around her. But luckily he has other relationships in his life where he's able to, until he really can't anymore. Well, even to the end. I mean, even when he's, giving his final speech at the end, you still see the humanity in him.
Mm-hmm. Right. Working with Chinoye, obviously this is a passion project for her. She did a great deal of research into the criminal justice system before she made this movie. What was that collaboration like? And I mean, what did she give you as a director that helped you make the best cut of this movie possible?
Well, we cut this movie basically attached at the hip, which I loved. She was very articulate, but very collaborative. Let me rephrase. Very articulate and very collaborative. And somehow, and I think it's due to our personalities and who we are, we really found a lot of joy around making the film. We created these very dark and difficult scenes, and yet somehow laughed through it and enjoyed ourselves and really enjoyed the process. We're both super hard workers and very focused and love what we do. I think that had a lot to do with it as well. I think we both love our work. But what I loved about working with Chinoye is that she had a real sense as a filmmaker and what she wanted, how she wanted the film to feel. And we wanted to give it a sense of day-to-day, the pacing. I've seen interviews, or I've seen articles where they've called the pacing excruciating. And I think I take that as a compliment because we really tried to make the audience feel what it feels like to be in prison on a daily basis.
Talk a little bit about the audience and awards reaction to this movie, because I mean it's gotten won the grand prize at Sundance, Independent Spirit nominations, Gotham nominations. What does that recognition mean for you guys for a film that is really tough to watch and pretty grim?
No one says enjoy the film.
Right.
But it's an important, it's an important film. Well, I was lucky enough to be at Sundance, and it was an interesting time back then, a year ago. Everybody was coming in and snapping up movies, and we had a great screening. And I say great screening, you can hear a pin drop in the audience when this film, people don't breathe, which is the most amazing thing to me. You really can hear people sniffling a little bit, but you really hear this silence because the film is so quiet. But so we were there, and people were talking about the movie, and there was buzz about the movie, but nobody was snapping it up. And we're like, okay, well, I guess people liked the film critically. But then I left, and then the weekend came when the awards were given out, and then we won the grand jury prize, which was phenomenal. And we, of course, thought that it was correctly given, but it was a big, big surprise. And everything sort of changed from there. There was a lot of press, there was a lot of, even for me, even for editing, and even for all of the people who worked on the film, people started talking about it. And then it sort of died down for a little while, right? And then the award season came again now. And the fact that we have 3 Spirit Award nominations is amazing, well deserved. And it's exciting. For me, it means people are going to see the film. And that's the most important thing. We keep talking about it, or Alfre Woodard keeps saying she wishes that this movie would play in the multiplexes, not just in the art house theaters, because people really should see this. It's the kind of movie that you go, and then afterwards you go for coffee and talk about what you think about it. And there aren't that many movies like that these days. And so hopefully the awards will give it that kind of recognition that people will, in fact, go see it.
Well, it's a very important and powerful film, and I wish you guys all the best of luck in the award season. Phyllis, thanks so much for your time. Congratulations on your work.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking.